The end of the combat mission in Iraq is likely to lead to a resurgence of the terrorist groups in the region, just what Mike was talking about. Well, because this is not a new song and dance, we're going to take you over to this touch screen and show you what the U.S. looked like as it entered Iraq in 2003. You might remember the goal was to end al-Qaeda there. When U.S. troops withdrew in 2011, ISIS took al-Qaeda's place. This is what ISIS's territory looked like in 2011. U.S. troops returned in 2015, and 4 years later, ISIS only controlled this, solely because of the U.S. intervention. Same situation is playing out right now in Afghanistan. The U.S. is withdrawing, and the Taliban is expanding. Here is the Taliban control in April. You can see government control, which means U.S. allied control. Pretty big area here, especially around Kabul. The Taliban now is all in red. This is just in 3 months. The point, even with hundreds of thousands of U.S.-trained Afghan troops, the Afghan government is struggling to keep its adversaries at bay. And the more Afghan soldiers that surrender, the more U.S. military hardware the Taliban gets. So we have to ask, will we see deja vu all over again in Iraq? Joining us now to discuss that, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. And despite these risks, Lieutenant Colonel, it seems as though you think this withdrawal is a good idea.
Oh, not only a good idea, it's long overdue. We should have done this a long time ago. And you know, one of the first reasons is kind of a misconception about what happened when Obama pulled them out in 2011. Because, look, we had done the surge and had lowered the violence and all that, and we gave what Petraeus had called breathing space to the Iraqis. The ISIS didn't arise because we left. ISIS arose because the Iraqis squandered that political opportunity by getting rid of all the Sunnis and causing more opposition in the Sunnis within their own government and putting in other people. So they caused it, and it wasn't our fault.
Well, it may not have been our fault, but it's likely to think it's going to happen again. You can imagine the Iranians are pretty happy about this announcement.
No, well, to the contrary. See, we have proven that it doesn't matter whether you have 186,000, 20,000, or 2,500. Our military, it's not a militarily accomplishable mission. So by staying there, all we would do is perpetuate the loss of troops, the loss of money, and it would still not be won. Well, that's pulling out is what we need to do for our interests.
So what you're saying is, but wouldn't our interests be, especially in Afghanistan, it is not in the national security interest of the United States for the Taliban to take back over, is it?
Well, what is in the interest of the United States is to make sure that our security is taken care of. And if by putting troops over there, we actually distract from potentially existential fights against China or Russia or North Korea, if that ever happens, that's actually detracting from our core military operations of being ready to defend our country. And it just doesn't help us out by staying in something that can't be militarily accomplished.
Well, they say Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires, so you make a good point in that it may be unwinnable. So if Kabul falls to the Taliban, you're not going to come back on here and say we need to go back in there, are you?
No, not a chance. Absolutely not. In fact, I'm on record as saying I hope it doesn't happen. I don't think it will, because I think that they're going to get their house in order when they know their life depends on getting it right. But if it doesn't, then that's something that they're going to have to live with, because they have to live with it long term. We have to defend our country no matter what.
It'd be hard to imagine that they're going to get their house in order. The Afghan soldiers have been surrendering by the thousands and giving the Taliban all this military hardware. If I remember correctly, and you and I have been privileged enough to have a lot of conversations with you. You praised President Trump for taking out Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, correct?
Well, I didn't necessarily praise that, but what I did say is that shows that we have the ability to go and strike direct targets to the United States without having to have troops on the ground, so that we don't need that in order to secure ourselves.
Aren't, though, these the same type of arguments that were used in the 1930s, the America First movement that said, it's Europe's war, let them deal with it, we only care if they come and invade us, and then all of a sudden Pearl Harbor happened?
No, it's a lot different, because in that case, that was something that was theoretical. What we have now is 20 full years of proof that this can't be won militarily. So what we need to do, what we have also proven, is that we have the ability to take out direct threats to our country, no matter where in the world they are, from the United States and from some of our other global bases. So we don't have to have troops there. So we now have figured out how to do this because of all the mistakes that we've made, especially with the intelligence. So we're in much better shape now than we were back then, but we've got to prepare for the potentially existential fights against China or Russia. That's where it matters.
And a number of people have made that very same argument in terms of freeing up resources. Actually, a question I had for Mike Vaccaro, we just weren't able to get to it. But it brings up an important point. H.R. McMaster wrote a piece just now in the Wall Street Journal saying that there's going to be a catastrophe coming inside Afghanistan. There's no way that the CIA and the human intelligence services of the U.S. are going to be able to operate inside an Afghanistan that's controlled by the Taliban. We'll have no idea if al-Qaeda is going to all of a sudden be plotting more attacks.
Well, just bear in mind that 20 years ago, actually 1997, the United States had bin Laden in their crosshairs with the U.S. or CIA and special operations assets when we had nothing in there but the Taliban. So we have a lot more capability than I think HR is letting on at.
Fair enough. Lieutenant Colonel, we appreciate your insights and your thoughts. Appreciate it, sir. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great conversation.